Welcome back to our analysis of The Big O. Here we will be exploring the ending and plot summary. Big O is 26 episodes long and can be broken into several chunks. The first chunk is from episode 1 to about episode 12. These opening episodes start us off on the adventure of the Big O and consist of standalone episodes that, while exploring some important themes and making important introductions, are for the most part serving to bring up important thinking points, world-building moments, and nudging us into suspending our disbelief. This is not an insult. These episodes are all quite enjoyable and serve the very important task of getting the viewer to get behind the characters. The next chunk is from episodes 13 to 15, which start to set up the seemingly grander plot. These episodes rapidly introduce concepts such as the Union, Gordon Rosewater, Alan Gabriel, the importance of memories, and many other plot devices that will be resolved later. Note, this also covers the jump from Season 1 to 2, and I feel it is important to note this because a grander plot was probably seen as somewhat necessary in order to rope in both viewers and producers for a second season. It also explains the different appearances of the show. As you can tell, the second series was done digitally and looks cleaner, although it does lose a bit of its stylistic charm. These episodes are good, but they throw a lot at the wall, and for this reason, some of it may seem muddled, as none of it is 100% clearly explained until the series' conclusion. The third chunk is episodes 16 to 19, and this is another batch of standalone episodes. Yet oddly, some of the best episodes are in this chunk. Episode 17 features one of my favorite anime speeches of all time, which says a lot knowing how much the genre loves its speeches. Episode 18 is an excellent comedy episode. The fourth chunk is episodes 20 through 22, which cover the attack of the Union, but don't go as far as the final reveals of the show. Finally, the final chunk is episodes 23 through 26. These serve to answer some of the questions we had from previous episodes, like 13 through 15, and steer the series towards its ending. The series has been accelerating since episode 20, and in the final minutes of episode 24, the series seems to go off the rails, as the idea that the Big O is just a simulated reality is confirmed, although this had been hinted at since the fourth episode. That is to say, the Big O universe is just a simulated reality by Angel, and just a production of sorts. After this revelation, Roger negotiates with Angel, and she resets the timeline of the Big O. I will explain why I actually like this ending in a bit. Looking at the plot in its entirety, the main plot of the Big O is basically that negotiator Roger Smith negotiates settlements between any parties that will accept his services, and sometimes this leads him into deeper rabbit holes, or into fights. For this reason, Roger sometimes needs the help of Big O, the giant mech that he pilots and seems to have some degree of self-awareness. After being joined by android Dorothy Wainwright, who quickly becomes a breakout star of the series, Roger is asked to investigate a series of murders in episode 13. This leads him to the discovery that the memories of the past live on in several people that they were implanted in, and that there are nefarious forces seeking these memories. It is eventually revealed that these forces are that of the Union, a vengeful group of exiles, and Alex Rosewater, who wants to restart society by employing another big foul. As the Union is defeated by Rosewater in episode 25, Rosewater faces off against Roger, who is saved by Dorothy. Before this fight can conclude, however, Angel realizes she is the director, and that the Big O universe is her production. Then, in the Big O universe/production, she manifests as Big Venus, a Big with the powers to destroy and restart reality. Just as the real-life and distraught Angel is about to delete her entire production, the Big O universe, Roger convinces her not to give up and to embrace herself and her own visions. This leads to Big Venus restarting the Big O world so that it can go about on a better trajectory than one which it had set upon earlier. You see, this show has two plots, the surface one of finding out the memories and fighting against giant robots, and a subtler one, introduced later, as Angel, the director, of overcoming whatever it was that troubled her via the use of self-insertion into her own fictional world, which she created, as mentioned above. Before I get into how the ending made me feel and its implications, I'd like to say that the Big O is more of a character story than a plot one. In fact, one of the key points of the series is that life itself is a journey and does not have a definite end, i.e. there are no true endings. Everything leads to something else. This lesson is taught to the viewer in episode 13, which, fittingly enough, was originally supposed to be the last episode. As a whole, I would like to say that the plot of Big O is actually relatively unimportant, and I think this is by design. As mentioned earlier, the main plot does not even take up half the episodes, and seems to be a bit muddled at times. I think this is actually a strength of sorts, and it ties into the theme of choosing one's own path. Regardless of whether or not the plot is what it is, what matters is that Roger and the cast grew to choose and embrace the choices they made. They embraced who they were as characters and grew on their own. This is shown as early as the 13th episode, ironically the first episode of the so-called main plot. In this episode, Gordon Rosewater tells Roger that it is by design that his supposedly prophetic book Metropolis is left unfinished. This is because life has no true endings, and that people are always sort of on some kind of journey or character quest. Metropolis cannot be finished, because the people of the world have their own agency and lives, and therefore cannot entirely be bound or cowed by fate or other factors. Life is about the journey, and not the destination. And therefore, the ending in 26 is actually quite apt, as although the ending, it is obvious the story of Roger Smith, and life as a whole, go on. The first feeling I had at the moment of the screen going black on the final episode is bittersweet. This feeling is what I felt the most upon the completion of the Big O, and my dwelling on it for an inordinate amount of time. And while I feel this feeling is nothing to complain about, I do think it is one that we should delve into deeper. I do not think this feeling came from poor planning or writing, but actually as a result of the opposite. The show, while having charming and endearing characters, is not the sunniest. As a neo-noir-influenced piece, it has an air of darkness and sadness, of harsh reality. What I mean is that while the show was never depressing, it was never the happiest either. There is a maturity to it, and its characters, and this makes them feel realistic and somewhat serious, or at least by anime standards. One could argue that this is one of the show's strongest points, in fact, that the humanity of these characters makes them so endearing. And as real or serious characters, they must come to realistic personal growths and conclusions. And I think that this is the reason the ending feels bittersweet. Looking at the ending on the surface, I can understand why many deem it bad. Since the timeline seems to be reset, the ending comes out of nowhere if you're not paying close attention, and the Big O had been a simulated reality the whole time. As explained earlier, Angel is revealed to be the director behind the Big O, which is actually some kind of production. Just as Angel is about to scrap it, as Big Venus, Roger appeals to her and the negotiator makes one last negotiation. In this last settlement, he convinces Angel not to destroy everything, but she still decides to reset them so that they can turn out better. This is where the bitter comes from. If the timeline is a complete reset, then I would agree that it is bad, because this means the characters in the previous 26 episodes repeat ad nauseum and waste everyone's time. In this reality, there is no growth, and the outcome is always the same. All the enduring actions we have seen and all of the great character moments have been lost to time, only to be repeated when they come up again in this loop. Nothing stays learned, and the viewer is deprived the satisfaction of solid character growth or a happy ending. I do not think that this is the outcome, however, as the lighting in the ending scene, Roger's reaffirmation of himself, and the ending title card seem to hint that this world, while reset, is not on the same trajectory that it was. The ending title card of "We have come to terms" is what I feel is the best supporter of this idea. That the world will be a better one, and even if a reset is not a repeat. And this is the sweet part. While everyone likes happy endings, they are not always the most realistic. And while I wouldn't complain about one here, I like the ending here as A. The show was hinting at it before episode 24, in fact, since episode 4. So I feel like something as this was needed just to, make sure that all those hints and imageries earlier go to good use. B. I respect how bold it was to simply have the show end the way it does. C. A non-conclusion ties into the theme of life going on. And, finally, a bittersweet ending is more realistic and applicable to real life, and thus I feel it makes the show stick with the viewer more, especially considering how much of a loop it threw so many people for. Even if the reality of the Big O is a simulated one created by Angel, I still think the ending has positive implications for both plots, however. The creative exploits of one tend to reflect the emotional state of their creator. For example, if one is writing poetry while saddened, their poetry will likely reflect this to an extent. If one composes a song while jubilant, it will more likely have a sound that is triumphant and fun. This is because people tend to use creative ventures as outlets for emotional energy, regardless of their emotional state. Thus, even if Big O is a simulated environment, the lighter tone shown by the reset and the shot of a smiling angel in it show that at least she is in a better headspace than she was before. As for the surface plot, the ending shows that no matter what the odds or struggle are, or how insignificant one might seem in the face of the greater universe, life goes on. For these reasons, I feel that the plot of The Big O is actually genius. Its seeming insignificance marries it perfectly with the significance of the themes that will be explored later, and I think that the reset is not a throwaway. In fact, I think it ties everything together. I think that the plot is actually one of the reasons I love the show, and unfortunately, it's also one of the reasons many others seem to loathe the ending. Although, as the themes of the show and the characters are the main strength of it, I feel that the plot putting itself under them to support them is actually very good, and I think that it speaks to the show's unique character and beauty.